Heidi ho, how's it go? Welcome to Whole Lotta Rich. I'm Rich Latta. Today we've got a very special guest, Brent, my editor. Brent is a client of
Hello.
mine and he started doing editing work for me in exchange for massages. And it's been working out quite well. I'm very grateful to have Brent as my editor. How you doing today, Brent?
Oh man, I'm doing great. Thank you for the introduction. You're right. Our exchange does work out really well. I enjoy working on my editing, and it's a great trade-off for me.
Yeah, yeah. Win-win all around. All right,
Absolutely.
so let's just jump into this. What is your background with Pink Floyd? Pink Floyd being, I never do an introduction for these things, but everybody knows Pink Floyd rose as a psychedelic rock band, and they went on to be legendary space rock and progressive rock masters. So again, what is your background with Pink Floyd, Brent?
Yeah, so my background with Pink Floyd is pretty interesting. So I didn't actually grow up in that musical of a household. Most of my exposure to music was the 80s and 90s, that hard rock, AC/DC, Metallica, Led Zeppelin, things like that. I didn't even know about Pink Floyd for a really long time. I first actually heard about Pink Floyd when I was actually graduating from high school and into my early 20s by my high school best friend, close friend. His dad grew up back in the day with Pink Floyd. He was pretty old and he was kind of a hippie. So that was a cool thing to have a friend's father who was really familiar with a band like that. So he exposed me to a ton about Pink Floyd, and it was really lucky. Like you said, Pink Floyd has a lot of psychedelic history, and there's a lot of drug use and whatnot associated with them. And so my experience with Pink Floyd was actually, in the pool on a summer day, drinking a couple beers with some friends, spending an hour or two in the pool, enjoying summer. And I think that made the experiences for me with Pink Floyd a lot deeper and a lot more kind of toward what they were going for. They wanted a journey, they wanted you to experience the music. So I got a fun experience kind of as an introduction to Pink Floyd back in my early 20s.
All right, very cool. As for me, I've been into Pink Floyd since my mid-teens, I'd say. I'm a big fan. I never did see Pink Floyd live, but I did see Roger Waters a few years ago, and it was a fantastic show. The visuals were just breathtaking. Never seen anything like it. All right, so we're doing ranking worst to best, 15 studio albums. We'll do a top 10 at the end. Brent, you are the guest. Why don't you go ahead and start us off with your number 15, your bottom.
Alrighty. Yeah, so I've never done any rankings before, so this was fun. First time for everything. I didn't really find a bad Pink Floyd album. It's more about what mood you're in and what your state of mind and what you're looking for is with Pink Floyd. However, with that being said, my bottom, my number 15 is A Sauce Full of Secrets. Um, Honestly, the album is kind of random. There's not a lot of flow. It jumps around. You kind of have to turn up and down the speakers as you're listening. It's hard on the ears. Um, I actually have never heard of this album prior to this, and I know why now. It's just chaotic. It's clear the band doesn't really have an identity. This one came out in 1968, so it was one of their more original ones. It might have even been their debut. I'm not sure. I don't have that note in front of me. The only track that I actually enjoyed was Jug Band Blues, and everything else is just not my favorite. As far as ratings, I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars.
All right. Well, that's not a bad rating for how much you didn't like it. For me, 3 stars is just okay. Is that about what you'd say? Just
Yeah, I would
okay.
say it's okay. I mean, it's worth maybe listening to as a Pink Floyd fan, but if you were just trying to experience Pink Floyd, you could skip it and you're not missing anything.
Okay. All right. That's fair. Okay, my number 15, and this might be somewhat controversial. I've got their ninth studio album, Wish You Were Here, from 1975. This album really only has three songs, and one of them sucks. Welcome to the Machine just sounds like a robot. Most of the album is comprised of the sleepy Shine On You Crazy Diamond, which just drones on and on. And I'm kidding. I'm joking. There's no way Wish You Were Here is my bottom. Okay.
I couldn't take it. I had to look. There's no way, it can't be. Shine On
All
You's a
right. I
masterpiece, man.
probably got a few people, probably some people turned the video off already. But
Oh man.
anyway, yeah, my number 15 is actually their third studio album, More, from 1969. This is the soundtrack for the underground film More, which I actually saw. As I recall, there wasn't much to it, just sort of a hipster, arty, low budget type film. Pink Floyd threw this album together quite quickly and incorporated some improvisation. Most of these tracks are good, but nothing here rises to the level of excellent. Opening track Cirrus Minor is flooded with chirping birds. It's sort of a psychedelic folk song with acoustic guitar, then organ and various tape effects. It's subdued and kind of trippy, but not exactly exceptional. Then we get the Nile song, which is a rare heavy song for Pink Floyd. The instrumental Up the Khyber has cool drums and a noodly organ. Cymbeline is very good, and I love the tempo changes. The main theme instrumental is very good as well, as is Ibiza Bar, which is rockin' like the Nile song, but slightly better in my opinion. The only mad track here is the rather ambient instrumental Quicksilver, which I found to be a bit tedious. But that is, in fact, the only song in their entire catalog I would choose to skip, which tells you how great I think Pink Floyd is. And then the final track, the instrumental dramatic theme, brings the album to a close with a cool ending featuring David Gilmour's spacey, tripped out guitar. This might be a little generous, but I'm giving More a solid 3.5 stars. This is a good album.
Awesome. Yeah, More is definitely a decent album. No question about that. So my number 14, uh, I kind of had a problem listening to this album. I had a problem ranking this album, so I kind of just threw it on here at the bottom because it should be, and that's The Endless River. Um, it's a good album, it takes a lot of the old recordings, it uses a lot of their old music. There's parts of it I like. From what I understand, there's four sides to this album, and I enjoyed the first side and the last side. The middle sides, two and three, it just kind of drags on. I didn't love the music. It does deliver some of those classic Pink Floyd sounds throughout. So it is a good album. But again, it's kind of just reusing old albums. From what I was able to dig up researching, this album was strictly a tribute toward Richard Wright. Um, Again, it's cool, it's fun. I'm glad that they kind of did something cool. But again, it was 2014, so it's not like original work from them per se. So I said it's a not terrible, but it's not the best either. I gave it 3.25 out of 5 stars.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, Endless River is also my number 14, their 15th and final studio album from 2014. I think this is a wonderful final album for Pink Floyd. It has a lot of detractors, but I enjoyed it. Coming 20 years after the Division Bell, it's mostly instrumental music, a bit ambient. But if you enjoy hearing Pink Floyd play like I do, I see no reason why you wouldn't think this was at least good, if not great. In particular, I love hearing David Gilmour play, but the whole band sounds good, really. These tracks were built from Division Bell era jam sessions by guitarist David Gilmour, drummer Nick Mason, and keyboardist Rick Wright. And it's meant to be a tribute to Rick, who died of cancer in 2008. We do hear some variation among these tracks. Some tracks are more aggressive, and we occasionally hear some sax. There are slight echoes, like you've been saying, slight echoes of Pink Floyd songs from the past, such as Another Brick on the Wall and One of These Days. Louder Than Words is the only track here with actual lyrics, and it's a fitting final song from Pink Floyd, acknowledging the fact that their music will live on much longer than they themselves will. I gave this 3.5 stars.
3.5. So I mean, we're pretty close on that. That makes sense. I enjoyed it, like you said.
Yeah.
It's 2014 though. All right. So my number 13 is gonna be The Piper at the Gates of Dawn. Uh this album was weird. It was creative. They probably had a lot of fun. It kind of reminds me of like a jam sesh in the garage. And that's kind of part of why I like it. But that's also part of why it's ranked so low for me. Occasionally some of the songs have some real talent shining through, but again, it's just there's nothing synchronized. It's all just thrown together. You hear some special sounds coming together in some of the songs toward the middle of the album, but again, it just gets lost through the jam session feel, which again is something I like, but it's why it's so low. So for The Piper at the Gates of Dawn, I ranked them at 3.5 out of 5 stars.
Alrighty. We'll be talking about that much later. Um, my number 13 is their 13th studio album. It's funny how that lines up. A Momentary Lapse of Reason from 1987. So Roger Waters has moved on, and David Gilmour takes the reins of Pink Floyd. He brings in a lot of outside writers and session musicians, including bassist Tony Levin. Nick Mason and Rick Wright made minimal creative contributions. Roger Waters called this album a clever forgery, and while I deplore his egotism, I can see his point. This doesn't exactly measure up to Pink Floyd's best albums. It begins with the sound of a rowing boat, soon joined by eerie synths, creating sort of an avant-garde intro, and it's pretty good. Next, we get the rather mechanical but melodically solid Learning to Fly. I think it's a worthy hit song. There's a great guitar solo in there and effective use of primarily female background vocals that really soar, a classic Pink Floyd enhancement. The ominous Dogs of War has both a great guitar solo and a great sax solo. The album definitely sounds like a product of the 80s. In particular, we hear it in the percolating synth bed on One Slip. On the Turning Away is the other standout track, and it's a moving plea to have compassion for the less fortunate in the world and to actually help them. The second side is uniformly good, but nothing on this album strikes me as excellent. This feels a bit hollow for a Pink Floyd album, but it's still good. So it's another 3.5 stars.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely one that's a little bit later on for me.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, but you did point out all the things that I like about that album. So that's exciting. All right, so we're on to number 12.
Yes.
So here at number 12 is where I have the 69 album of More. This was actually the first time I ever heard
Which
this
one?
album, and the 1969 album More.
More. Okay, more. Cool.
Yes,
Gotcha.
yeah, More. Um, yeah, so this is actually the first time I heard this album, and it surprised me. I really enjoyed how it opened. Um, I love the instrumentals. I love the creativeness of Pink Floyd. I like how wild they get with different things to produce sounds for them and whatnot. Um, the song More Blues was a highlight for me on that album. I wrote down that that song really is just pretty much exactly what I like about music. Um, and that's like the strong parts of it, right? It jumps around stylistically, but you can start hearing the band getting together. Into the 70s is when they really started hitting their stride with some of their best stuff. So I think that's definitely seen with this album. It's all starting to really come together. I don't think it's a must listen, but I do think it's a good album that someone would enjoy, especially someone who's diving this deep into Pink Floyd. So for the album More, I do also rank it at 3.5 out of 5 stars. Same as you.
Cool beans. My number 12 is their 12th studio album, once again lining up. It's the Final Cut from 1983. The Final Cut is the Wall's darker, more serious cousin. Several of the tracks were leftovers from the Wall sessions. The full title is The Final Cut, a requiem for the post-war dream. It's very solemn, often very dramatic, and it's way more personal from Roger Waters' point of view than The Wall, addressing personal details about his life and his father's death in World War II. The album is dedicated to his father. This is an anti-war album loaded with references to actual politicians like Margaret Thatcher and the war in the Falkland Islands, which, for Waters, signaled the end of the post-war dream. This isn't the first time Waters has gone after Margaret Thatcher. He really let her have it on the Animals album. On the Final Cut, Rogers really gets down in the weeds. The basic message is that war is hell, and it not only destroys lives, but it ruins the lives of the survivors. Not exactly a fun album, but I feel it's a worthwhile piece of art, and the music is generally good. We get a few tortured guitar solos from David Gilmour, who effectively channels the pain of war through his instrument. Elsewhere, we get sax solos, and those are quite effective as well. The hero's return is a highlight. The first part of it moves along rather jarringly, as if it's dodging shrapnel. The Gunner's Dream is the one song I would call excellent. It's about a gunner looking back on his life and imagining a better world as he parachutes out of his plane. It's very moving. Not Now, John is the one song that rocks here, and it's definitely a highlight. Roger Waters handles the vast majority of the vocals on the final cut, and while he's not the greatest vocalist, I usually enjoy his singing. He's very expressive. The production is immaculate, full of the kinds of oral details that made the Wall special. The final cut gets accused of being a Roger Waters solo album in disguise. Richard Wright had been fired, so he's not here at all. Nick Mason and David Gilmour's contributions were rather minimal. Apparently, it was torture for the band to make, and in a few more years, Waters would be gone. The last track, Two Suns in the Sunset, imagines what a nuclear holocaust would be like. So, yeah, dreary stuff. Ultimately, the final cut is a depressing album and not one you're going to want to throw on for a casual listen. You sit down with the final cut when you're in the mood for some somber, contemplative listening. 3.75 stars, really good.
Yeah, man, that's a spot on review of the final cut. I was looking at some of my notes and they're almost identical. How funny. But it's not time for me to talk about that one. So it's up to number 11, which brings me to Uma Guma. Uh, this one's a weird one. It's definitely experimental. It's definitely got a ton of instrumentals. It feels like it's coming together, but it's still kind of all over the place. You definitely need to be in a mood for this album. Uh, each band member kind of went off in their own direction. And from what I was understanding, it was really influenced by them experimenting, which, as we know, they're very known for experimenting in their albums. So this one they really went off the whales, the went off the walls for, super experimental, lots of instrumentals, just all kinds of stuff scattered. Basically a really fun jam session and seeing what they could put together as an album. Um, I enjoy it and I respect the album. I don't necessarily like it that much. I don't want to listen to it that much, but I do think it's good for what it is. It was decent. So I ended up giving it a 3.75 out of 5 stars.
Très intéressant. Very interesting. All right. My number 11 is their 14th studio album, The Division Bell, from 1994. If a momentary lapse of reason was Pink Floyd learning to fly without Roger Waters, the Bell finds the band in full flight. There is a clutch of excellent songs here. What Do You Want From Me is defiant, featuring some incendiary guitar from Gilmour. Coming Back to Life is amazing. It includes no less than three guitar solos, each with its own vibe. Killer track, but the best song and the one I consider to be absolute gold is Keep Talking. I love the give and take between Gilmour's vocals and the female background vocals, and I love the appearance of Stephen Hawking. Those are the songs I would call excellent, but there are several other strong tracks, such as A Great Day for Freedom, about, in part, the fall of the Berlin Wall, but also Pink Floyd itself. Several of these songs have similar double meanings. The finale, High Hopes, is also very good. I like the way the chiming church bell is perfectly in sync with the beat. The primary draw of this album is the guitar playing from David Gilmour, especially the wonderful solos he takes. That is, in fact, a primary source of my enjoyment of Pink Floyd's music. Unfortunately, the Division Bell is at times a bit light, and I even get a slight whiff of adult contemporary in a few places, such as on Richard Wright's Wearing the Inside Out. Richard's voice is noticeably older and a bit weary, but the great guitar on this track makes up for that. It is nice to have Richard back on board as a full band member as well. So the songs here range from good to gold. Everything is at least good, and a few songs are great. So I'm at a solid 4 stars for the Division Bell.
That's awesome, man. I love hearing the highlights of the Division Bell, it is one of my more favorite ones for later on, but those guitar solos are what really keep me going on that album. My number 10 will be Metal from 1971. Um, I enjoy how it opens up strong. The song One of These Days comes in with some really great bass guitar work. It's nice, man. Fearless is a top song for me. I love the rhythm. I love how the guitar kind of shreds on it and gets to take over at times. It's a good album. It's definitely stronger than the other five I've mentioned. Uh, but one thing about it is it's a little short compared to what's coming. Again, this was 71, and their best albums pretty much started coming after this with Dark Side in 73 and such. So I saw a lot of positivity in this album, and I thought it was building towards something great. So it's exciting to see a band take a progression that's so, to me, vivid with this specific album from 71. I think Pink Floyd really starts to evolve. They start putting longer tracks, building the atmosphere, really setting tones deep, deep in their albums. And I think that this is one of the better ones that leads up to their legendary run, which would be that kind of mid 70s. And overall, I thought Metal was a great album, but I ended up only rating it at 3.75 out of 5 stars. It is good, it's worth listening to. It's just still not quite a 4 for me.
All right. Good review. My number 10 is their fifth studio album, Atom Heart Mother. It's from 1970, the year of my birth. The first side of this album is the title track Sweet. It is very strange. It begins as an orchestral piece with horns that sound a bit off, intentionally so. Same with the organ and violin, and later we get some truly bizarre vocals from a choir. I do think this is good music. It's interesting, but it definitely sounds a little off. Toward the end of it, we get some spacey electronics and eventually a full rock band sound, followed by the original horn-led motif and the finale. The whole suite lasts nearly 24 minutes and was co-written and orchestrated with avant-garde composer Ron Geeson. I gotta say, I was not bored. The second side finds Waters, Wright, and Gilmore each taking a song and mostly doing it on their own, similar to what they did on Umaguma or Umaguma, however you want to say it. Um, If is a beautiful song written and sung by Roger Waters, a quiet acoustic number with wonderful lyrics. I also think Richard Wright's Summer 68 is great. The added horn solos make it sound quite unique. Gilmore's Fat Old Son is very good. The final track, the 13-minute Alan Psychedelic Breakfast, is prime stoner material. I'm not saying you need to be on drugs to appreciate this, but there's a certain stoner aesthetic at play here. It begins with the sound of dripping water. We hear Alan enter the kitchen and begin preparing his breakfast. This is Alan Stiles, who was the band's roadie at the time. We seem to be hearing his thoughts as they cross his brain. There's some nice piano and organ. At one point, there is a nice cross section of two acoustic guitars playing together. And at another point, we hear the sound of crackling Rice Krispies, freshly introduced to milk. Lots of weird vocals and sounds. By the end of it, like the title track, we hear the full band before it ends the way it began, with dripping water. I really like this album, and I think it was a necessary step toward future greatness. 4 stars.
You know, Rich, it always makes me feel good when our ratings kind of line up. Because Atom Heart Mother is my number 9. And I could repeat everything you just said, so I won't. I'll just start on some of the highlights. I thought that opening track, that is that like orchestra masterpiece they have. I think it plays for like a little over 20 minutes. And it's incredibly good classical music. Like you said, you were interested the whole time. You enjoyed what they did. Uh, it's just different, experimental, and classical. If you're in the mood for a classical, exciting mental listen, you'd probably love this album. Uh, yeah, man. And that last song, um, that one is pretty interesting, right? Kind of going through his head in a normal day with the dripping water, and then you start hearing his thoughts. It's just so interesting. The first time I heard that song, I had to restart it because I was confused on what I was listening to. I thought I shifted to a different like genre or something. I just wasn't ready for it. So that was just a fun part of it. But yeah, it's classical. It's great. It's got a killer orchestra. And like you, I also have it at 4 out of 5 stars.
All right. Very nice. My number 9, here's where I have A Saucer Full of Secrets, their second album. It's from 1968. This is a transitional album. The band were dealing with their former leader, Sid Barrett's failing mental state, and they brought in new member David Gilmour to compensate. Barrett contributed just one song to Saucerful, The Strange Jug Band Blues, in which Sid seems to document his increasing detachment from the world. The song gets pretty trippy, and the Salvation Army International Staff Band contributes some brass that got mixed into the song in weird ways. It's interesting, but a far cry from the glorious songs on The Piper at the Gates of Dawn. Keyboardist Richard Wright makes the most essential contributions to Saucerful. He wrote and sang the gorgeous, dreamy Remember a Day and the wonderful Seesaw featuring Mellotron, vibes, and wah wah guitar. The hypnotic Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun is also excellent, and Wright plays vibes on that one as well. It's also notable for being the only track featuring all 5 current members of the band, including both Barrett and Gilmour. Corporal Clegg generally mocks the idea of war and gets pretty crazy, thanks especially to that kazoo. And by the end of it, the song gets really noisy. The title track is nearly 12 minutes long and sort of an ambient piece with 4 different movements. It doesn't exactly blow me away, but it's good. Interestingly, Pink Floyd drummer Nick Mason considers this to be his favorite Pink Floyd album. Everything here is at least good, and 3 of these 7 tracks are great. So I rate this album another 4 stars.
Interesting. It was interesting to listen to some of your high points about that album. I definitely want to give it another listen to and see if I enjoy it kind of like you did. But up next for me is going to be my number 8, which Rich, this was your number 12. This is going to be the final cut from 83. Like Rich talked on, it's a pretty dark album. It talks a lot about war and life and politics, and as Rich highlighted, Roger Waters really takes over this whole album, and no one enjoyed producing it. However, there is still some high points lyrically. Some of the lyrics are super strong and powerful. The way they mixed in, their guitars and their drumming, I think is something that Pink Floyd always does well once they kind of formed their sound. So this was 83, so this was after their heydays through the 70s. And even a unhappy group of Pink Floyd under control of Rogers Waters is still going to produce some good albums and some crazy good songs. I enjoyed the post-war dream uh, in every aspect. I mean, lyrically, it was great. I enjoyed the emotional ties. And then the title track, The Final Cut, I also was a big fan of. It's strong. It's definitely not a band effort since it was so heavily controlled by one person, but it does have good music. So my rating of The Final Cut is 4 out of 5 stars.
All right, yeah, we're not too far off on that. Okay, my number eight, here's where I have Ummagumma, their fourth studio album from 1969 when I was in utero. Ummagumma is a double album. The first disc is trippy, excellent space rock. I love it, but I want to talk about the second disc. In my music community, it gets poo-pooed on big time, but I'm here to defend it. It's very avant-garde. Each band member got half a side of an LP to do their own thing with it. I gotta say, I think all four of these guys came through with flying colors. First, we get keyboard player Rick Wright's contribution. There's some nice mellotron, but much of it is noodling on the piano and writing the low end notes with wide outstretched hands, making that thunderstorm sound. It's something children do when first experimenting with the piano. I'm sure this was a source of much derision among critics, but honestly, I quite enjoy this. I give Right segment 3.5 stars. Next, we have bassist Roger Waters. His Grantchester Meadows is unfortunately marred by an overuse of tweeting birds. Now, I'm not against tweeting birds in a song, but these particular birds are on a loop that Roger created, and he really overdoes it, crowding the track with birdsong. The birds don't sound natural and come off too distracting and annoying. Underneath this is a nice spare acoustic guitar and soft vocal, but because of the birds, it's ultimately just an okay track at best. But the next Roger Waters song is Stoner Heaven. Several species of furry animals gathered together in a cave and grooving with a pick. Waters creates wild animal sounds and percussion noises using his mouth. It's very trippy, very enjoyable track. By the end of it, Waters imitates a dude with a Scottish accent that is just completely incomprehensible to an American like me. I find it to be quite amusing, though. It's an excellent track. Next is David Gilmour, and his The Narrow Way is excellent, with loads of trippy avant-garde effects over some sweet acoustic guitar. The vocals at the end of it are kind of hard to hear and understand, but they sound good. Finally, we get Nick Mason with the Grand Vizar's Garden Party, featuring some flute from his then wife, uncredited. Most of it is just a succession of sounds and percussion effects, not much in the way of a composition. By the end of it, he blasts away on a drum kit, and then his wife comes in to finish things up on the flute. I rate his contribution 3.75 stars. Composition or not, it was enjoyable to me. So even when this album falters, you got to admire the fearless experimentalism and the daring experiment in which each band member gets his chance to do his own thing by himself. That combined with the awesome live disc, I gotta go 4.5 stars.
Wow, 4.5. That's awesome, man. I can tell you really enjoyed that one. Um, all right, yeah. So it's on to number seven for me. Um, I don't know. This might be where I start losing people, but at this point, I think all of their albums are super strong. It's just kind of your taste and how you feel. So my number seven is gonna be Animals from 1977. I made a note that the album seemed darker and a little bit more aggressive, but that's also on the side of that it was influenced so much uh by a bunch of animals and then the political climate of the 70s. So it's kind of an interesting album in that sense. Um, I think it's good. I do like it. The song Dogs was one of my highlights, actually. It's a long song, but around halfway through, he just starts shredding on the guitar. And it's just one of the most enjoyable guitar solos, I mean, possibly in their whole catalog. It really is just incredible. It's just a long song, and it comes after a bunch of weird animal sounds and stuff that I just didn't love as much. Um, and this was again released in 77. So this is after Dark Side, after Wish You Were Here, and it just it doesn't hang up to that level that those albums were. So it just falls a little short. Overall, I did like the album. It was just unique, completely unique and creative. Overall, my rating is going to be 4.25 out of 5 stars for Animals.
You said 4.25?
Yep.
Okay, very cool. My number seven is their sixth studio album, Metal, from 1971. Metal is a bit of a disjointed affair, but there's some great stuff here. Opener One of These Days is a wild rocker once it gets going. It starts off with the sound of wind and then some echoey bass guitars that slide into some weird electronics before the rockin' drums and guitars kick in. The track ends with more wind and segs directly into the lovely, exquisite Appello of Winds. Then we get Fearless, a great uplifting song. At the end of the track, we hear the chanting of a crowd in support of the Liverpool Football Club. Kind of random, but not unexpected from Pink Floyd, I guess. And then the album takes another strange turn into the light jazz pop of Saint-Tropez. It's charming, and there are sweet piano and slide guitar solos in there. Less charming is Seamus, a 12-bar blues with a dog barking all the way through it. It's meant to be charming and funny, but I'm generally not a fan of howling or barking dogs, not to mention traditional blues. But then we get the flip side, Echoes, the centerpiece of the album. Over 23 minutes long, it's a masterwork. At times absolutely gorgeous, with swirling organ, fantastic guitars and drums, fantabulous vocals. Toward the middle of the track, it gets really groovy for a while before turning spacey. Soon the atmosphere is invaded by siren-like dolphin or seagull noises in the ether. I read that Gilmore accidentally discovered he could create this shrieking sound by running a guitar through a wah pedal backwards. Before long, the trippy music comes back and builds in intensity before finally releasing as the sweetly melodic vocals return. Echoes is pure gold. 4.5 stars for Metal. Seamus keeps this from being 5 stars.
Yeah, so you were a big fan of that album.
Yeah.
Yeah, huh, I'll go give it another listen when we're done with this. That is one part that's been enjoyable through helping you with all this is like I'm exposed to so much music. It's exciting to, go back and visit stuff after you hear someone else's opinion about it.
Yeah. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, so number six for me, this is gonna be where I have The Wall, from 1979. Um, I was researching and they said that The Wall was a lot more of a concept album, where they knew what they wanted to get done, but it was a little bit less, I guess, like constructed, I guess. I don't know if maybe they used each other and kind of worked together a lot more or what, but it seems like there's a lot of concept with some all-time highs. The Wall produces songs like Comfortably Numb, Hey You, and Is There Anybody Out There? Each song is a little bit unique to itself. Is There Anybody Out There just kind of uses a voice to kind of produce this beautiful sound, and then Comfortably Numb obviously has all the bass and guitar that's legendary and why it was so played even on the radio. Um, from what I understand, this album was driven a lot by Roger Waters' personal experiences, dealing with fame, isolation, loss. It's emotional, it's a little bit theatrical. It's new, it's unique, and it seems like it's just kind of like a man trying to express himself through his music, which is kind of why I was touching base on it being more of a concept per se. There's some really big highs on this album. There's some, I don't want to call them lows, but they miss a little bit. But the highs for me way outshine any low. So for The Wall, I'm at 4.5 out of 5 stars.
All right. That is excellent.
Yeah, it is excellent. It's worth listening to. Again, it has some of their best individual songs, which for Pink Floyd, that's saying a lot because their albums to me stand out more than any individual song.
Would you say that it works for you as a whole to some extent, or would you rather just skip around?
Yeah, it has to be a whole for me when it comes to Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
Specifically, like my Division Bell ranking is even higher because
Yeah.
I think individually the songs on that album really aren't the best. But if you have, an hour or so to sit down and listen to it from front to back, it's way better than it is for any standalone song.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's how it is in my community. People are pretty strict about putting an album on and hearing it all the way through. Um,
Yeah, the proper way.
yeah. Yeah, I'll cheat sometimes, but no, when obviously I do that when I'm making a video like this. Okay, my number six is their seventh studio album, Obscured by Clouds from 1972. I love this one. I've heard it so many times. It's a soundtrack for the art film La Vallée, which I have not seen. It was recorded very quickly, like they did with the More soundtrack. What would become Dark Side of the Moon was already in the works. The instrumentals ranged from just okay to excellent, but all of the songs with vocals are gold, except for Burning Bridges, which is still 4.5 excellent. I love Gilmore's guitar on this album, so expressive. He is surely one of my very favorite guitarists, and he's got some great vocal leads on this one too. Gold, It's in the is one of the more rocking Pink Floyd songs, and it's a lot of fun, as is Free For, the only one sung by Waters, featuring some great lyrics. The memories of a man in his old age, the deeds of a man in his prime. Sort of foreshadows Dark Side there. My favorite on the album is the easygoing Stay, which is absolutely beautiful. What's the deal? has a wonderful vocal melody and more great lyrics. Mudmen is an excellent instrumental, but I don't really like the final track, another instrumental called Absolutely Curtains. The segment played by the band is very good, but I honestly don't care for the chanting at the end. It's a field recording of the Mapuga tribe as featured in the film, and it's interesting. But as in part of the album, I'd rather not hear it. So honestly, by that point, I usually just turn off the album if I'm doing a casual listen. It's the main reason why I'm not going 5 stars on this. That and When You're In, which is a good but merely good instrumental. So a very strong 4.5 stars for Obscured by Clouds. This is a great album to chill out with, and I consider it highly underrated.
Yeah, amongst my friends, I would say Obscured by Clouds is one of our more preferred albums because of that more chill factor. Which is funny because that is my number five, is Obscured by Clouds. And you highlighted everything that I think is good and bad about the album. It starts good, goes mid, it gets amazing. It has its gold in the dot dot dot, which is a really great song. Ironically, I didn't realize how much I liked that song till I started trying to put together my top 10 list and everything. Uh, and also the song Stay, that song Stay is the kind that you can add to any playlist. And when it comes on, people are going to like it. It's a great pool song, hang out with the family, it's stuff like that. It's just a good put together song. And while that can't be said for every song on the album, or many of Pink Floyd songs per se, individually, they stand alone strong, but Stay definitely is a top one for me. Um, I think it really shows that this was in the works and Dark Side of the Moon was starting to get put together. My biggest note here is that you can clearly hear their iconic sounds starting to come together. And you just know that whatever's coming next is going to be really a smash out of the park, which, spoiler alert, it's 1972. So 1973 is The Dark Side of the Moon. And so you really see it all coming together. And that was my biggest note, is that you can just tell that what's coming next is going to be truly incredible. Obscured by Clouds is a great album, definitely worth listening to it. I, like you, have it rated at 4.5 out of 5 stars.
Right, very cool, very cool. My number five is their 10th studio album, Animals, from 1977. This is an amazing album. It's loosely based on George Orwell's novel Animal Farm. Different animals around the farm represent different kinds of people. The album is very dark, quite negative commentary on the human condition. However, the song that opens and closes the album, Pigs on the Wing, offers a ray of comfort in the form of a loved one or spouse. Part one opens the record and part two closes it. It's my favorite part of the album, but the whole thing is mind-blowingly good. Dogs fills up most of side one, and it features some incredible guitar from Gilmore, so moving and soulful. He really captures the sorrow of modern life. At one point, Richard turns in a great synth solo, and then that tragic guitar part returns toward the end. On the second side, Pigs, three different ones. Uh, that one takes some swipes at people Roger Waters doesn't care for, openly mocking them for being charades or charades, as I guess I was taught to say. I love the piano flourishes and the cowbell. This time around, I really noticed the fantastic bass work at the end of this track. Finally, we get sheep, and the sheep who were mindless followers finally rise up and overthrow the dogs, killing them. But they are just ignorant sheep, so they revert back to the ways of oppression they had under the dogs because they don't know any better. And thus the cycle repeats itself. Just a damning indictment of humanity and one of Pink Floyd's most fully realized albums. 5 stars.
Yeah, I can tell you're a big fan of that one. Yeah, so number four for me, this is where I think my experience growing up and listening to music probably ties into this a little bit. For number four, I have the 1987 album, A Momentary Lapse of Reason. So, like Rich pointed out way earlier in the video, this is post Waters Pink Floyd. It's mostly led by Gilmore. It's 1987, and there was a lot of pressure to see if Pink Floyd could deliver anything still. It's been 8 years since Wish You Were Here. That's not right. It's been it's been 12 years since Wish You Were Here, not eight. And for me, I think they really delivered. I love this album, A Momentary Lapse of Reason. I think the opening is fantastic on the Turning Away. It's just an incredible song. I enjoy the instrumentals, the lyrics. I think they just did a really good job, for it being 1987. And the song "The Dogs of War" is one of my top Pink Floyd songs standalone. So that probably ups this album's rating for me a little bit. I enjoy the message. I enjoy the way they rock. And I think it's one of the best vocal performances of any of their songs. Again, I'm just a big fan of that song, "A Dogs of War." So it definitely ups their rating for me. So, I give A Momentary Lapse of Reason, Rich's least favorite rating, 4.75 out of 5.
All right. Well, you made a good case for it, and there's nothing wrong with having your own particular tastes. So, all right, here's where I have "Wish You Were Here," their ninth studio album. It's from 1975. Another masterpiece, just incredible. The "Shine On You Crazy Diamonds" suite that bookends the album is brilliant. I love the little shimmer you hear at the beginning. Lots of great keyboard and electric guitar work. It's a moving tribute to Syd Barrett, as is the title track, which might be their best song. I love the way it starts off as if we're listening to the radio and changing stations, only to arrive on "Wish You Were Here" and start playing along with an acoustic guitar. The other two songs offer scathing views of the music industry. "Welcome to the Machine" has an amazing mechanical atmosphere, but my favorite track here is "Have a Cigar," which has amazing chord changes and a soaring chorus that goes, "And did we tell you the name of the game, boy? We call it riding the gravy train." Roger Waters has admitted he wanted to become rich and afford all the luxuries his heart desired, despite feeling resentful toward the music industry game. Interestingly, they recruited Roy Harper for the lead vocal because they were having trouble doing it themselves. Roy was at Abbey Road Studios at the time, recording his own album. I just think it's a phenomenal song, as is the whole record. This is gold front to back, 5 stars.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. That means that we're officially on to the top three albums. And well, I mean, I'll begin with definitely, in my opinion, Pink Floyd's most underrated album, which is Division Bell from 1994. Um, I just I just love Division Bell. If you're, hanging out with your friends in the evening and you're looking for some good, enjoyable music that isn't too heavy or too soft, but it kind of rocks, Division Bell is kind of what you're interested in. The lyrics take you on a journey. It's one of the best albums I think they have to listen to cover. As you just spoke on, Wish You Were Here would actually be my number one rated one from cover to cover. But Division Bell would be a very close number two. Again, it just plays so much better when you can take that full hour to experience it and enjoy it how it flows. Rich touched on, it's not classic Pink Floyd. The sound has changed. The members have changed a little bit, but the way that they work in their guitars, the vocals, the overall vibe, it's just done really well. And again, my influence and what I listened to as a kid probably plays in here. So I just enjoy the way Division Bell rocks. I can't necessarily highlight any specific song that I think is just incredible, 5 out of 5 gold. But as a whole, I think the album is extremely good. So the Division Bell, I believe, is the number one most underrated Pink Floyd album, and I have it rated at 5 stars.
Has its fans, but yeah, I can see why you would think it was underrated. Wow. Okay. So finally, my number three. I finally have The Piper at the Gates of Dawn, the debut from the magical year of 1967. I love this album so much. It's a psychedelic touchstone, and I consider it a masterpiece. It was recorded at Abbey Road Studios at the same time the Beatles were working on Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, another psychedelic masterpiece. The Beatles album is superior musically, of course, because it's the Beatles, but I think Piper outdoes Pepper in terms of psychedelia. Piper is a very clever album with so many extra touches and sounds. There's so much to listen to and pick up on. Very weird music. This is vocalist, guitarist, and primary songwriter Syd Barrett's tour de force. His version of psychedelic British whimsy is utterly charming. Sadly, he began to deteriorate mentally by the end of 1967, probably from taking too much LSD, combined with the childhood trauma of losing his father. By April the following year, he was out of the band because he could no longer function. Very sad. He's sort of a cult figure today, and many notable musicians consider him an influence, such as Robin Hitchcock, Tom York, and Kevin Shields. Piper is wall to wall gold. I give every one of these tracks 5 stars, from the spacey jam fest of the opener Astronomy Domine, the frenetic Lucifer Sam, to the truly bizarre Pow R Toke H. Interstellar Overdrive is a trip, largely improvised. The stereo version has some wild panning back and forth between the speakers at the end of the song when the motif returns, but the mono mix of this album is actually superior. They put a lot more work into that version because mono was still the preferred medium at the time. The remaining songs on side two are so charming and whimsical. I absolutely adore the gnome, and the Celeste at the chorus is perfect. The final track, Bike, is very odd and finishes the album with some trippy psychedelic effects at the end. I am absolutely crazy about the Piper at the Gates of Dawn. 5 stars.
Wow. Yeah, I think a lot of the music that came out around that time, I can tell you're definitely a fan of, from the late 60s, that 67, 68, 69 time frame. And I think that's probably something that I just don't appreciate as much as you do. So I think that's a good reason on why you love that album so much more than I do. But yeah, let's go ahead and hop to number two. And it's finally time for me to put out there The Dark Side of the Moon.
Oh, wow.
1973, I mean, it's a masterpiece. I have nothing negative to say about it. Um, it's one of those things that I assume most people have probably heard this album to some extent. The only thing about it that I'm not just solely sold on is their use of clocks, time, and ticking. Um, I get it, symbolically, there's a lot of use for it. And I do enjoy it a little bit, but it kind of throws me off of what I'm there for. I enjoy the smoother transitions within Pink Floyd, and I enjoy their more, creative stuff that stays on the same level. So, in time when the alarms start going off, it just goes on for like 12 seconds or something. It just seems a tiny bit too long. And I get that that's me just critiquing something that's probably not relevant, but it is just something I don't love about it a little bit. But I get over it. If you listen to the whole album cover to cover, the ticking actually adds to it, which is kind of funny to think about. But when a random one-off Pink Floyd song comes on and it's time, and all of a sudden you hear this ticking, and you're like, "What the fuck's that?" And then it starts going off, and you're like, "Oh shit, I'm listening to a song." It just throws me off. But as an album cover to cover, Dark Side's amazing, and the ticking from time adds to it in the album to album listen. So I, of course, have Dark Side at 5 stars. That's nothing unique or special. I just wish the clocks didn't tick as long as they do.
Okay, well, you sound like me because I'm known for having my little hang-ups about various little things. So, okay,
Mm,
but obviously 5 stars.
obviously, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Okay, yeah, it turns out Dark Side is also my number two. It's their eighth studio album from 1973. Yeah, this is the big kahuna. This made Pink Floyd huge and very wealthy. It is the fourth best-selling album in history. Famously, it stayed on the Billboard chart for over 900 weeks. And I think it deserves all the accolades it gets. This is the masterpiece of masterpieces. You won't find a better produced album. Both sides of the record are designed as continuous pieces of music. I love when albums do that. Dark Side begins and ends with a heartbeat, which is appropriate because the album is basically about life. The message: live in the moment and make the best of life because it is fleeting. That's the first side. The second side looks outward, addressing money, war, but also insanity and depression, pressures that fracture modern existence. The album is so incredibly rich in detail. Like never before, Pink Floyd used the studio as an instrument, employing quadraphonic sound to create aural architecture. Pink Floyd recorded a series of interviews with people they knew and got a lot of great lines that were used on the album. The lyrics are so poignant and meaningful, seeing Roger Waters really blossoming as a lyricist like never before. I love the electronics that went into making On the Run, really trippy stuff. The chiming clocks that introduce the song Time are stoner heaven for some people, as is the tuned rototoms that Nick Mason utilizes to create some very musical percussion. Time is just unbelievably good. And then it slips into a reprise of Breathe in the Air. Just exquisite. Claire Torrey singing on The Great Gig in the Sky brings tears to my eyes. She really sings her guts out, channeling a soul clinging to life as it comes to the end. On the second side, Money is such a cool song. Some people say it doesn't really fit on the album, but I disagree. It's good to have variation. And On the Run stands out as another track that doesn't sound like the others. So Money is in good company. You aren't likely to hear too many singles in 7/4 time, though. Us and Them is a great song, but if I have any criticism about the album at all, I would have made it a little bit shorter. Dark Side finishes strong with the fantastic Brain Damage, boosted by some sweet female background vocals, which jumps right into Eclipse, an amazing climax to this mind-blowing album. Dark Side is possibly the most perfectly realized album or any album ever made. It is perfectly seamless. I can't say enough good things about it. Obviously, 5 stars.
Absolutely. It's fun to hear such good things, about Pink Floyd, especially Dark Side of the Moon, their songs on that album are just fantastic, especially listen cover to cover, like you even mentioned. So that means we're on to number one, which for me is Wish You Were Here from 1975. Um, I'm gonna just put it out there, I think this album is better than Dark Side of the Moon. I think it's a more enjoyable experience. I enjoy the songs more individually than I do with Dark Side. Dark Side as an album cover to cover, it's equal to Wish You Were Here, but individual songs, Wish You Were Here is better. I enjoy the like 30 minutes of Shine On You Crazy Diamond, broken into, parts 1 through 6 and 6 through 9. It adds a beautiful transition piece. It's one of those albums you put on and you walk away and you turn around and you're like, oh, did I ever start that album? And then it starts going a little bit and you're like, oh yeah, absolutely. I think the title track, Wish You Were Here, is one of their best songs they've put together, a top one for sure. Have a Cigar is one of my favorites also. And like you mentioned, this album was so influenced by the critique of the music industry and things going on in their personal life. So like there's a ton of evils to the music industry. Everybody wants to make you rich. Come on in, have a cigar, you're gonna go far. Like they're just basically saying anything they have to the band to get them to go forward. So it's just a critique of the industry and fame and such. I think like most bands, when they start blowing up, which obviously they blew up prior with Dark Side and such, fame isn't everything you wanted it to be. And I think Wish You Were Here might capsulate that better than any other album they have, and the highs are high, the lows are lows, but you know, the lows they have are just transitions for the music and it makes it better. It adds more emotional depth. So I think Wish You Were Here is one of those songs that it's nice to the ears, but it's nice to the heart and it's nice to the body, It's a peaceful listen to. It's relaxing, it's deep, it's enjoyable. And I honestly just can't say enough. I think Wish You Were Here is 5 stars, of course, but I think it's a premium 5 stars. I think it's a must listen to album. And I think this album also has some of their best alone standalone songs, which, I don't think there's a ton for Pink Floyd that do better individually, but this one could be talked about with Wish You Were Here, Have a Cigar, and Welcome to the Machine, of course. But yeah, man, solid 5 stars, 5.0 premium. I can't say enough good things about Wish You Were Here.
All right. Very cool. And I think you're in good company. I think a lot of people have that at number one.
Okay, well that's nice.
Dark Side too. But yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah, of
think
course.
I think Wish you were I think it's actually rated higher on Rate Your Music than Dark Side. I'd have to double check that. But yeah, uh my number one is probably a little bit less common as a number one. I've got The Wall, their
Mm.
11th studio album. It's from 1979. This is Pink Floyd's magnum opus. I think it's genius. When I was a teen, I watched the movie on VHS tape over and over in many different states of mind. The movie came a few years after the album release and contains most of the studio album. It's still one of my favorite movies, thanks especially to the use of surrealism. The songs on the wall are fantastic, and the way they seamlessly flow together is absolutely brilliant. It's one of the most famous concept albums, and it is the biggest selling double album ever. The basic concept revolves around our protagonist, Pink, who builds a mental wall to shield himself from the world. Each trauma in his life becomes another brick in the wall. By the end, he is completely isolated emotionally and must confront himself by standing trial in his mind. There's a lot more to it than that, but that's the basic idea. The whole album is one five-star song after another. I like all the little tiny in between pieces. I think it's all brilliant. Um, Standouts for me are, of course, the gorgeous, moving Hey You and Comfortably Numb, which floats in a narcotic haze. Interestingly, the amazing guitar solos in Comfortably Numb were constructed from multiple takes. And of course, he had to learn how to play like that so he could reproduce the solos in concert. But yeah, it started off just being pieced together. I think the final track, Outside the Wall, is very clever. It addresses the spectators who just witnessed the album or film. One other interesting note, the album ends with a broken sentence. Isn't this where, dot, 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 which is actually completed at the very beginning of the album, dot, 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 we came in. So the completed sentence is, isn't this where we came in? Which creates an endless cycle that repeats over and over and serves as a metaphor for recurring cycles of abuse and depression. Suffice it to say, there are several underlying themes and lots of weighty symbolism. You could write a book about this album. I consider the whole thing to be a great work of art, and due to my personal connection, I suppose, it had to be my number one. Of course, 5 stars.
Yeah, the wall has some crazy highs for me too. So I'm I'm excited to see that you like it so much.
Yeah, yeah. It's just I go way back with the wall and
As you're
yeah.
supposed to, you know?
All right, man. Why don't you go ahead and give me your top 10 stop songs going from 10 to 1.
Yeah, quick honorable mention. I actually did not add Shine On You Crazy Diamonds part 1 through 9, considering it's like 30 minutes. But I will say that if you want to take a ranking on that, that might be like a top 3 or 5. I just don't want to rank it because it's so long.
Yeah.
On the other side of that, there's a song from the final cut called One in a Few, which is about a minute long, but the song cuts off in the middle of him lyrics and speaking. So it's like an incomplete song, but it's to roll to the next one. But just because it's kind of incomplete slash cut off in the middle, I didn't rank it either. And then Fearless from Medell was number 11, a narrow miss. So to jump right into my top 10, first I have Stay from Obscured by Clouds. For number 9, I have Eclipse from Dark Side of the Moon. More songs from Dark Side probably could have made it on here, but it was just too difficult. So that's the only one that actually made it is Eclipse. For number 8, I have Gold. It's in the dot 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 from Obscured by Clouds. You mentioned it. That song rocks, man. Number 7, I have Welcome to the Machine from Wish You Were Here. Again, it's my top album, so you would assume it's going to be here. For number 6, I have Is There Anybody Out There from The Wall. When I first made my list, this was actually like my number 2, and then after listening to the other ones, I kind of shuffled it around, but I don't know. This top 10 could get changed any day and change order probably for the most part. For number 5, I have Poles Apart, which is from the Division Bell. Again, I don't think the Division Bell has super strong individual songs, but this one's about 6.5 minutes. And I think it highlights the highs of that album the best. So that's why I picked it. Number 4, and these top four are pretty much unanimous for me. I don't care the order, but I think they are like some of the four best songs. That's going to be The Dogs of War from A Momentary Lapse of Reason, one of my all-time favorites. Wish You Were Here from Wish You Were Here, one of my all-time favorites. Have a Cigar from Wish You Were Here. And then my number one is going to be Comfortably Numb from The Wall.
All right. Very cool. Very cool. I'm just going to blast through mine. My
Yeah.
number 10 is See Emily Play, their second ever single. Number 9, I've got Pigs, three different ones from Animals. Number 8, I've got Remember a Day, Rick Wright's song from A Saucer Full of Secrets. Number 7, Lucifer Sam from Piper at the Gates of Dawn. That also could have been Flaming, just a magical song. Number 6, I've got Hey You from The Wall. Number 5, I've got Stay from Obscured by Clouds. So we have that in common. 4, Have a Cigar. There's another one from Wish You Were Here. Number 3, I've got Echoes from Metal. Number 2, I've got Time from The Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah.
And number 1, we share the same one, Comfortably Numb from The Wall.
Yeah. That's
Very
just
cool.
probably their best single ever individual song released?
Yeah, it's up there. It's a really, really special song. Gives you a good feeling for sure. And I don't know, sort of a poignant feeling. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, Brent. So, any final thoughts about Pink Floyd before we sign off?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest takeaway I have from Pink Floyd, is the mood that you're in is really important when you select their album. They're not just kind of pick something randomly depending on, randomness. Like if you're feeling, a little low or a little soft or a little, relaxed, they have some albums that really stand out in those moods. And they have some albums that, it isn't what you would be looking for if you were looking for that versus if you're looking for like more rock, they have a few albums that are slightly better in that category, even though they're not necessarily rock, they're like psychedelic rock. So it's an enjoyable experience. I just think you need to listen to Pink Floyd album cover to cover. And Wish You Were Here is something that if you've never heard, you absolutely should go listen to because it's that good of an album.
For sure. Okay, I don't really have anything to add, but I sure did have fun. Thank you so much for joining me, Brent.
Yeah, thank you.
It
Thank
was
you
a
for having me.
blast. It always is. Okay, everyone. Peace out. Y'all have a good one.